So what are attachment styles actually, and why do they matter? People aren't often quite sure what to make of it when they hear these terms, while understanding it a little bit better may help you to improve to understand yourself and the relationships you have with others. My name is Tim Van Roy and I'm a counseling psychologist doing my doctoral training, and welcome back to my channel. I make videos about relationships, communication and sex, and in today's video we're going to talk about something quite fundamental about the way we have relationships with other people. So what is attachment really? Well, attachment is a series of patterns of how one interacts and relates to other people. It really is a blueprint that is often formed in childhood and lays a foundation or a basis on how we go about our lives and interact with significant others. So for example, partners or really close friends or family members. So let's call them blueprints or internal maps that people have developed on how they interact with people, how they respond to intimacy, and whether they're looking for that connection with the other or not looking for it. So while these so-called blueprints of interacting with other people are often formed in childhood, it is not static. So traumatic experiences as an adult can have a knock-on effect as well, or positive healing, recovering experiences as an adult can also heal these blueprints. So how is it formed? Well, let's start with the example of starting a new job. So when you start a new job, you're often quite dependent in the first couple of weeks on your boss or your co-workers to guide you around, to show you around, tell you where to go and what to do. Throughout this initial period in that job, you tend to form a pattern or a map in your mind of how to go about things, how to do things in this workplace. Well, if we compare this to a child who is new in the world, you can imagine that every interaction and everything that happens for that child contributes to their internal map or their internal blueprint or how to go about life. A lot of this has to do with being dependent. The child is dependent on its caregivers to respond to what the child needs. Because unlike the adult in the work example, who can speak for itself and may speak up and ask questions, a child cannot. So while attachment or this internal blueprint is not solely developed in childhood, it is a good way to understand how important childhood can be and how it can set the tone of how we learn to have relationships with other people. Just like in the work example, you may learn in those first couple of weeks in that job what kind of relationships to have with your colleagues. Only imagine, as a child, you're learning from the get-go how to have those relationships with those adults and other kids in your life. So how do these internal blueprints develop? Often people develop either a more secure blueprint or a secure attachment, or an insecure blueprint or insecure attachment. It's also important to note here that these are spectrums, it are scales. It's not that black and white with either belonging just one to the other, but often people can find themselves a little bit more on one side than the other side. About 50 to 60% of the people have a secure attachment. So that means they have a secure pattern of relating to other people and feeling closeness. Well, the other 40-something% is made up out of insecure attachments. So these are people who experience insecure patterns of relating to other people. For this secure pattern to develop, the child has learned that it's safe to be with other people. It is, for example, safe to open up emotionally, to be around others. It has, for example, gotten appropriate reassurance and comforting when it was scared or when it was insecure about something. And for such an insecure pattern to develop, the child has learned that it is somewhat unsafe to be with others, to relate to others. So this can mean that it has learned that it's not safe to open up emotionally, that when they do, it's not good enough, or they get backlash to it. So they are not met with that comfort and that reassurance that the kid would need. So I'll briefly explain a little bit about the different types of insecure attachment, and I'll touch on two of them. So one is called more anxiously attached and the other one is called more avoidantly attached. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to call them pursuing and distancing, as I think those terms make a little bit more sense, especially in the context of romantic relationships. So what psychology calls the anxious attached is often what forms in adulthood the blueprint for being a pursuer in the relationships. So the pursuer tends to be someone who is quite critical of themselves, is fearful of rejection, and is therefore looking for validation and reassurance from their partner. They tend to have a lower self-esteem and a very positive image of other people. Therefore, that reassurance that they're looking for from their partner or their family or friends can feel really valuable to them, yet never really is that fulfilling. So this comes from a place where someone has learned that they have to be vocal about their needs, and often also results in that they are quite vocal when they're upset or angry when their needs are not met. So what in psychology sometimes is called the avoidantly attached is also sometimes called the distancer in relationships. So the distancer, although they enjoy spending time together and can enjoy being physical with someone, they often withdraw and become more distant in the relationship when it becomes too close or too serious. So unlike the pursuer in relationships, the distancer often has learned that it is not safe to express their needs, and often in arguments or in stressful times they will withdraw and can, for example, preoccupy themselves with work or hobbies and focus on something else rather than dealing with it head on. Someone who may relate to this pattern may be quite self-reliant and sometimes overly self-reliant, so tends to find it hard to open up and be vulnerable with other people, and tend to minimize the importance of emotional connection or emotional expression. So I hope after watching this video that attachments make a little bit more sense to you. I'm planning to cover a lot more on this in the future, because I think these dynamics that come with different patterns that we've learned go a long way in explaining why relationships can be so tricky and why people can be so different sometimes. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to be notified when I post those future videos.